Ja, herzlich willkommen zur neuen Ausgabe SI Talk. Ich bin wieder in Vancouver, habe eine neue Runde von Interviews gestartet und bei mir ist jetzt ein Start-Interview. Company Aequus, AQS, so dass ich es rauskriege, an TSX Venture, haben aber auch ein Frankfurt-Listing. Und neben mir ist der Doug Janzen, er ist CEO of the company. You are CEO of the company.
Founder und CEO.
Founder und CEO. Und er wird uns die Company in kurz einmal vorstellen. Es geht um Biotech. Und was er genau macht, ist ja ein schwieriges Business, sage ich einmal. Das wird er uns selbst sagen. Doug, thank you to have time for us. And I say this in my German introduction. You're in the area of biotech, and biotech is really a tough business. Normally, you need a huge amount of money that you can survive in this area. So what you're doing, that you can do it also out of a small company, that you can, and I saw your last few press releases, it looks really, you move in the right direction, but explain it a little bit.
I'm a scientist by training, and then I got into investment banking. And as a banker, I really struggled with what you just said. Biotech usually takes $1 billion in 10 years to get a product approved. And our last company, it took us 10 years to get that drug from preclinical to approval. And then we licensed it to Merck for $800 million in 2010. And I left after that with two of my senior people, and we started our own little private equity group. And what we really focus on is advancing biotech technologies in a different way than 10 years and $1 billion. So Aequus is a really good example of that. We created Aequus with the idea of reformulating existing drugs. So taking a medicine that's already on the market and just changing its route of delivery to provide a benefit.
Okay.
So when you do that, the safety and the efficacy is already being accepted by FDA. So instead of 10 years and $1 billion to get the product approved and all the risks going through that, in this case it takes 3 to 4 years and $15 million. And that was something that really was attractive to us, because at our heart we're drug developers, but even though we're all scientists, we don't do much science at Aequus. So when you think about our business, what we do is take existing products and improve on how they work with patients by changing their route of delivery. A real simple example, the drug that parents give their kids with epilepsy. So when the kid is having a seizure, is usually dosed either by an injection or a rectal suppository. You don't have to be a specialist in epilepsy to know that parents don't want to do either of those things. So you can improve existing drugs by changing how they're delivered. So we started the business with that thought, and at the same time we launched immediately. Within a year of starting our business, we had started commercial operations in Canada, where we sell drugs. And our goal was to be profitable. We're going to be profitable next year off of selling products into Canada, that we then use that revenue to generate global products with our reformulation idea. So when people think about Canada, it's a small market. Wall Street didn't wake up this morning wondering where that next $5 million Canadian product is. But we do, because when we cobble together, when we aggregate 3 or 4 of those, we have a very profitable business that continually can fund us doing global ideas. So when people think about our business, we're Canadian focused. We're the largest investors, so we're and funders to date, so we're very cautious about getting the company to profitability as quickly as we can. And we leverage Canadian revenue and our relationships with clinicians, with doctors in Canada, to build products that can have a global opportunity, like the reformulations that I talked about. And the one real thing that benefits our business is our salespeople each salesman makes 3 calls a day. We're in front of clinicians every day. And we're not like Pfizer or Merck, where the salesman has 30 products to discuss. We only have a couple. So what we really do is engage those clinicians in the next conversation, again, around reformulation. We're in ophthalmology. We sell ophthalmology drug today, and we're going to launch the drug from Santen out of Japan in the first part of next year. And when we get in front of ophthalmologists, we talk about our products, and then we start asking them, what other drugs do you see in the space that aren't available in Canada, that you might have seen in the US or Europe? What other delivery technologies do you think would be great for the eye? What would you want to put into those technologies? So those relationships with clinicians in Canada not only give us revenue and will make the company profitable next year, They also give us ideas and relationships for us to do smarter business as we do reformulations.
That's so. Your plan is still to be profitable next year, to 2018. What's kind of revenue or margin you must create, or EBIT you must create, there to be on break even?
So the business right now is spending about we'll just say $1 million a quarter. So for us, the margins on our sales are really high because the way we structure our transactions are around co-promotion with partners. So what we designed, essentially we kind of took a business idea from the energy space and we applied it to pharmaceutical sales, where we're not asking big pharma companies to divest the asset for Canada. It's rare that a global company would sell just Canada alone. It puts, there's risks if something went wrong in Canada, it would affect the bigger markets elsewhere. So instead we've designed these deal constructs where we will co-promote for the pharma company. So they'll handle the manufacturing. They're going to handle all the regulatory interactions with Health Canada, with FDA, with EMEA. Because in the drug world, if you have an adverse event in Vancouver today, you need to inform the FDA by the end of day tomorrow that has happened. So it's really important to drug companies to keep that under their control. And we allow them to keep all of the medical affairs and marketing. What we just do is the reimbursement discussions and the boots on the ground, the sales infrastructure. So margins for us are like we don't carry cost of sales on our cost of goods on our side. Sorry, we just carry the cost of sales. So margins are about 80%. Long story short, to answer your question, around revenues of $4 million, 4 to 5, that's when we break even. So the first quarter of $1.2 million to $1.3 million in total revenues will be neutral on cash flow.
So and how many products you have now in the sales pipeline?
So we have 2 right now that we're selling in Canada. We announced a deal a few months ago with Santen International. Santen is the largest ophthalmology company in Europe and Asia, and they're launching their company into North America. So all their senior people are really focused on the U.S., as they should be. So in Canada, we're their partner. We're their only infrastructure, like commercial infrastructure in Canada.
Is it tough to get in contact with these big companies as a small company?
Joe, we thought it would be, but there's no one else doing this in Canada. So there used to be specialty pharma companies like Valiant and Concordia and Maris. Those companies waited for a global company to divest an asset. Okay. So you waited for a smart seller to sell a product, and then you outbid all your competitors to get it. And history has showed that was a bad business model. You always overpaid. For us, because we don't need to own the asset, we don't need to book sales, Santen actually cold called us. We're in discussions around more products right now, and again, it's that same idea that there's a lot of assets that have never got into Canada that are available in the US or Europe, or are under-promoted in Canada. And we're in a great spot to go add more. So we expect more deals before year end and throughout next year. We think we can build revenues.
It sounds like a really interesting business, but besides the reformula thing, but it sounds like an interesting business.
It is. We have a private equity focus. We're pretty excited about it. Again, in the world of biotech, generating $40 or $50 million of revenue in Canada isn't what NASDAQ money managers are looking for.
No.
So we're not going to cure cancer. We're just building a really good business. And when you take that money and you spend it on then products that can have global opportunity, that's where some more blue sky comes in. In the same way we do drug delivery, we had Canadian clinicians come and ask us about cannabis. And we have no special insights about cannabis, but we're very good at doing drug delivery at the highest levels with FDA, Health Canada, EMEA, and engaging with clinicians in clinical trials and providing products that clinicians want. In the Canadian context, cannabis got approved by the Supreme Court, not by Health Canada. So the medical community has been completely bypassed. And now their patients are getting it off of websites or from dispensaries, and there's lots of room for improvement in clinical data. So we're in a good spot to apply the same skills that we do every day, engaging with clinicians, generating revenue, asking the clinicians questions, and then making a product better. Not inventing new products, but making an existing product better. We think cannabis falls in the same mix. So when we
to summarize, you have 2 products at the moment on the market. The third one is coming. you're looking for other opportunities, and you have a really high margin on it, then it's clear it's coming out of that the big companies, the Canadian market is too small, and your business model is very interesting. Then you are not interesting to have revenues or huge revenues. You're only interesting to be partner of the big companies.
Yeah, we want to get the business profitable, and we have the two products on the market you mentioned, and then the Santen product follows. We then have licensed 2 anti-epileptics out of the U.S. from a company called Supernus. So another example, Supernus is a sophisticated company. These 2 drugs will do $400 million in aggregate in the U.S. They're a multi-billion-dollar company. They have no infrastructure in Canada. So we got the rights for Canada, and we think those drugs will launch in late 2018. Late next year. Yeah. So the revenue is keep going. And then we use that money. Right now we use it for our 3 transdermal patches, the long-acting Abilify, the long-acting Diclegis, and Clobazam. And those drugs, those products, those can do $200 or $300 million a year in the U.S. So it's using the Canadian Foundation to fund higher value blue sky things where we have global opportunities. Okay,
and then in this Canadian operation you have also the cannabis sector, where the cannabis, you told us it's getting out by federal law that it's legal next year, I think. So and all the clinicals have no really data about it and so on. And you provide them now over time. For sure, it's not possible you do it in a short period of time. So you need the data. But I saw and I think this was the last press release, and coming back then now to the reformulizing thing, you're coming up that you get a license or patent for China.
Yes, that's for our long-acting patch for Abilify.
Yeah. So, but this is coming. This is the reformular thing on the globals.
That's right.
So, and what do you expect? A license or a patent is one thing, but you look then for bigger companies to bring this to the market.
Right. So for reformulation, when you reformulate a product, what the FDA or the regulators want you to show is that I can get the same amount of drug into you with a pill as I can into person B with the patch. So we've now run 2 successful clinical studies with Abilify, showing that we can get the right amount of drug into a patient with the patch. We met with FDA and defined the path forward. And we're right now in partnership discussions for Europe and Asia. So that Chinese patent was really important, as we're looking for a partner for those territories. That'll bring us some cash up front, and they'll commit money to the program, and then we'd get a royalty. We're going to hang on to those U.S. rights and the Canadian rights longer. Ultimately, we'd probably keep Canada and partner it out or sell it into the U.S. We divest it into the U.S. But in general, that Canadian dollars and Canadian know-how has made a global product there. And that's something that we want to repeat that. Same thing with the Diclegis patch. So Diclegis is a drug. It's the only drug available in the U.S. for women who have nausea during pregnancy. So they're taking the way it's dosed is 4 to 5 times a day with water while you're vomiting 4 to 5 times an hour in the morning. So you never know. The patient never knows if they've thrown up the drug, if they have enough, if it's been absorbed. Very hesitant to over-medicate when you're pregnant. So taking that same medicine and making it into a once-a-day patch that they put on at night, and it gives them symptom relief throughout the morning, and then they can pull it off at noon or whenever they feel comfortable. It's a really elegant solution. So again, that's a product that we had a successful clinical study in July, and we'll be meeting with FDA in December to define the path forward. And we're already in partnership discussions with that again, we would like to partner it out for Europe and Asia and keep North America longer. But we'll see. There's a lot of interest in the U.S. rights for that as well.
Okay. And this is, I would say, where you create the huge jump.
That's blue sky.
That's the blue sky.
Yeah.
So the Canadian business, I must say, is the foundation that's bring the cash in that you can invest in this kind of research and development. And this is then the blue sky.
And let's go back to your original point about biotech. Most biotech companies are only blue sky. There's no fundamentals.
Yeah, for sure.
They need to convince you that the product could be worth $1 billion, so you would risk putting money in at $50 million. For us, we know that game. Like we've lived that big drug development world. What we want is a business that could be profitable long term, and those profits can be used to pay dividends back to shareholders, of which we're very large shareholders, so we like that, and can continue to fund in different investments. So when I used to go to Europe all the time when I was running a $1 billion NASDAQ company, you'd meet the family-owned pharmaceutical companies in Italy and in Switzerland. They're small. They're small companies, but my God, they had good times, didn't they? Like they've been making money for 50 years, not one drug at a time the way North American biotech works. So for us, it's that same approach. We want to build a successful business that can pay its bills and make capital in Canada long term, and then use the relationships, use the know-how, use the capital to make smart, bigger bets, for a global product. But we're not going to be doing novel science that takes hundreds of millions of dollars and 80% failure rate. That's not what we look for.
Okay, I understand the business model. Come to share structure.
So we have simple common shares. I think there's 74 million shares outstanding, and there's roughly 8 million warrants at 45 cents.
And where are the biggest shareholders? Or
the founders, insiders, we own about 40%.
Okay.
And then there's some large, like high net worth individuals in the U.S. and Canada. There's a couple funds, not a huge amount of funds, but probably like 4 or 5 institutional accounts on stock, and the rest is retail held.
How much cash you have?
Just a bit under $3 million right now. So we think that takes us through to profitability.
So it should enough money to be profitable.
Yeah, we're not looking to raise capital. We have a shelf in place that we always renew, an active shelf, but we're not accessing capital. I think the next sources of money are going to come from our own operations, from partnerships, partnerships for Europe and Asia, and in the cannabis space, we've seen the rise of a couple of these royalty companies, Cannabis Wheaton and Canarex Royalty. And the one thing that we spent a lot of time talking to them, because most of the Canadian cannabis space is growers. And that's essentially a domestic business. That's a Canadian-only business. When we take a cannabinoid formulation and run it through a clinical trial and see how it's working, the second we then improve it by putting it in a patch or a novel topical, that's no longer a Canadian product. That's a global product. 'Cause we have patents around the formulation. So our normal business is leveraging Canada to make global products. It's the same in the cannabis business. So those royalty companies don't see a lot of global opportunities. So we don't have many products in the space yet, but we're an interesting kind of hybrid in that space that we can provide the type of products that could have intellectual property around the world.
Yeah, and especially it's. You see it on Germany. Germany makes this year that medical marijuana is legal.
Yeah.
So, but there are no really companies that can facilitate something.
Right.
And this is, I think, an area where really globally can come. Right. Maybe not the recreational side, but the medical side. Yeah. I think it's really.
And it's in our industry, there's 2 things that give you a leg up. First off is having clinical information that others don't have, and the next is then to have patents around that. And it's that gathering of clinical information that there's just this vacuum. Cannabis got approved, and people are using it. But every kind of report most reports are anecdotal. There's only been a handful of companies who have ever run true clinical studies. GW Pharma, Zegner, but there's a handful. So we're really excited about a deal we announced this summer with a company called eHave. And in the same way digital has changed every industry, it's starting to change the way clinical trials are run. So you can start tracking patients on your phone. You can start asking them qualitative questions about, did your product reduce your pain? How was on a scale of 1 to 10, what are the side effects? That type of data is not enough for FDA, but it's great in the cannabis space because you don't need the FDA. No. You can start adding data to an area where there's none. And that's always has value, and that has value to the clinicians that we talk to every day, and as as product developers, when you see a product that's really starting to work in a certain way, then maybe you do go find a novel delivery and get patents on it and make that a global product.
Doug, I think it was an interesting start interview.
Thank you.
It was a little bit longer than I expect, but it's very interesting how difficult or your many sides your business has. So I don't expect this, but thank you for the update. for the first introduction.
Thank you.
Ja, das war die erste Einführung in die Firma und das ist echt eigentlich spannend. Also ich bin jetzt gespannt, ob ich das so zusammenbekomme. Biotech, ich bin ja eher immer ein bisschen skeptisch gegenüber Biotech, denn Sie wissen, wir brauchen großes Geld ungefähr, oder gesagt, ja, man investiert ein paar 100 Millionen, damit man dann doch halt eine Milliarden-Company hat. Und auf diesem Weg gehen bei sehr vielen Firmen die Lichter aus, weil einfach einer das Geld fehlt oder es kommt halt trotzdem dann in irgendeiner Phase raus, es funktioniert nicht. Ich habe natürlich schon in Vorbereitung vor dem Interview gesehen, dass Sie halt an der Reformulation nennt man das im Englischen, also dass Sie an einer überarbeiteten Formel der Verabreichung im Prinzip arbeiten, also von bestehenden bereits lizenzierten Medikamente, wo man kein Sicherheitsproblem mehr hat, weil die alles schon erledigt worden ist, sondern da geht es jetzt dann nur mehr um die Verabreichung. Also meistens geht es darum, dass man ein Pflaster raufklebt und kann dieses auch aufgenommen werden vom Körper, genau in dieselben Dosen, wie es sein muss und. Das heißt, da müssen Studien gemacht werden, aber um den Wirkstoff gibt es gibt's keine Prüfungen mehr, weil der schon zugelassen ist. So, aber das ist nur ein Teil ihres Business. Da haben sie jetzt ein paar ganz gute Erfolge gehabt, in China und so weiter, Zulassungen, Patente auch schon bekommen, die stehen auch jetzt bereit für den sozusagen Verkauf, dass man das für einen Partner gibt, da kommt Cash dementsprechend rein und wenn ich zwischen die Zeilen so richtig gehört habe, dann erwarten sie das auch in relativ kurzer Zeit. Die kanadischen und US-Patente möchten sie sich nur ein bisschen länger behalten, weil da hoffen, dass sie einen höheren Preis wahrscheinlich bekommen. Aber ein Standard-Business ist, also ein Business, wo sie Cashflow generieren, ist, dass sie Medikamente nehmen, die in anderen Bereichen der Welt zugelassen sind, in Europa, teilweise USA, aber für Kanada nicht zugelassen sind, beziehungsweise zugelassen schon, aber es gibt keinen Vertrieb, weil Kanada an sich zu klein ist für die großen Pharmaunternehmen. Und da kommen Sie rein, Sie nehmen diese Produkte und vertreiben das sozusagen im kanadischen Bereich, haben sozusagen ein Vertriebsagreement, produziert wird es von der Muttercompany, die dieses Produkt herstellt. Das heißt, Sie sind nicht interessiert, dass da jetzt irgendwas produzieren, sondern sie sind eigentlich nur am Vertrieb interessiert. Und diese Kontakte mit den ganzen Kliniken, Doktoren nutzen sie auch, um weitere andere Produkte, die vor allem in ihrer Überarbeitung, also im Reformular-Business, diese Kontakte zu nutzen, weil es sind interessante Produkte, muss man denen auch für andere Verabreichung geben und. Also eine spannende Sache. Und dieses Kernbusiness soll Ihnen nächstes Jahr einen positiven Cashflow bescheren. Das heißt, Sie produzieren damit aus Ihrem Kernbusiness Cash, um diese Reformulationsbusiness voranzutreiben und dort kommt dieses schöne Blue Sky Potenzial her. Das heißt, Sie verdienen einfach mit der normalen Operation genug Cash, um sich das andere, dieses Research, wobei es kein klassisches Research ist wie bei Biotech-Unternehmen, zu leisten und dort entsteht das Blue Sky. Ein weiterer Sektor, und das ist so nebenbei noch, ist Cannabis, weil Cannabis zwar kein FDA-Produkt ist, also nicht zugelassen worden ist von der Gesundheitsbehörde, sondern es generell frei wird nächstes Jahr, aber es gibt kaum medizinische Untersuchungen. Wirkstoffe, wirkt es nicht, welche waren die Nebeneffekte und, also Nebenwirkungen. Und das ist eigentlich ein ganz interessantes, weil da haben Sie jetzt mehrere Teams auch gemacht, arbeiten Sie jetzt dran, mehr oder weniger diese Daten, die ja auch wertvoll sind, einmal zu erheben, wollen das auch teilweise dann irgendwie patentieren lassen, damit Sie es auch in anderen Ländern, so zum Beispiel auch in Deutschland, vertreiben können. Über zum Beispiel ein Pflaster, ein Cannabispflaster, das klebt man drauf und man weiß, der Wirkstoff wird so und so verabreicht und dadurch wird der Schmerz des Patienten geht es retour. Ja, spannende Sache, Aktienkurs, er hat dann Shareholder Structure, haben wir nachher noch gesprochen. Jetzt glaube ich sind 74 Millionen Aktien draußen, 40% sind in festen Händen bei Jana, bei den Gründern und beim Management. Dann gibt es noch ein paar größere Fonds, ein paar Wealthy Families und der Rest ist Streubesitz. Der Aktienkurs ist eher nach unten gegangen, hat sich jetzt unten stabilisiert, fängt jetzt gerade wieder an zu drehen und Cash sollten Sie keines mehr brauchen, weil sie eben davon ausgehen, dass sie entweder Lizenzeinnahme kriegen oder nächstes Jahr dann der Break-Even erreicht ist. 2 Produkte haben sie bereits im Markt, das 3. kommt jetzt im Herbst dazu und es gibt noch Gespräche mit anderen auch. Also spannende Sache, das könnte echt interessant sein, was sie da tut, weil die Aktie ist an sich eigentlich fast am Boden. Das wäre es von mir, von Aequus, AQS, Frankfurter Symbol, weiß ich leider nicht, beziehungsweise WKN, aber das werde ich in Untertitel dann dementsprechend einblenden. Tschüss und Baba. Thank you.
Dankeschön.